I want to first start by saying, I told you so. 2 weeks ago, I preached about Jacob and Esau, and I said Jacob is not one of our greatest examples. And I said we're going to hear stories over the next several weeks about Jacob, and you're not going to be impressed. We're not impressed today. I wasn't impressed. I'm actually a little bit angry at what Jacob and what was happening in society and what continues to happen in society, where there's decisions made about certain people and they're not there to be a part of that decision. And that is certainly true in the passage from Genesis that we had this morning. It's a passage about how women were property, and they were given for marriage not because of what they had chosen to do, but because of what their fathers wanted them to do. As I hear that story, I'm not thinking about what God is telling us to do and be. So I want to put that out there. There are other passages. I love Genesis. I love the Jacob story. I think there's other things they could have selected, but this is what I'm not in charge. Now, I want to tell you a story about when I was in about third or fourth grade. It seemed like it was these humongously long sessions in elementary school where the teacher would be getting up on the chalkboard and would be writing out these long sentences and breaking out all the different parts of the grammar parts. And they would be like, the nouns would have lines under the lines that came down, and the prepositions, and then we'd have direct objects, and I am telling you that this was a nightmare for me. And maybe it was a nightmare for you? You liked it? My wife likes it. That's why we're married to each other. Now, it would be this crazy amount of things going on. And at the end of the teacher would get done, and I'd be looking at it going, and she would say to the class, does everybody understand this? And I did not understand it at all. I kind of figured out nouns and verbs, but I was like, I don't know about this other stuff. And yet I would say, yes, I understand that. And then up on the overhead, they'd put another sentence that says, okay, now it's your turn, and we'd get in our notebook, and we'd have to outline and all this. And then I proved that I didn't know what she had done. Because I'd hand that in, and she'd go, he doesn't know. Now, I tell you that because in today's gospel lesson, Jesus tells a series of very short parables. And as I've been reading about them, scholars of these parables are not in consensus about what they mean today, 2,000 years later. But after Jesus got done telling these parables, he asked the crowd of people, do you understand this? And they in unison said, yes. We do this a lot. Not only when it's minor things like diagramming sentences, we do this a lot in our lives. We are told a lot of things. We get the fire hose of information that comes at us, and we are asked, do you understand? And we say yes, because we don't want them to think that we don't understand. That's a risk to say that we don't understand. It shows that we're not quite catching on. So we say, yes, of course I understand. And then it comes out and we're like, I don't know what I'm doing here. So when it's a minor decision like diagramming sentences, But when things come up in the world where it's life and death, and we don't understand, and we haven't taken the chance to understand, that's dangerous. The world's a dangerous place. We live in a time in which it seems dangerous every single day. And I wish we could go back to the times that I imagine were in the past, when it was calm and everything was peaceful. But the reality is that didn't happen. That was never the case. We've always been in this place where things are happening around us, and it requires us to understand something that's difficult to understand. And instead of saying, yes, I know what you're talking about, it takes some time to go and investigate and look for something and discover something about what I am called to do, what we are called to do, and what the world needs from us. When I was a kid, the parable of the mustard seed was taught that, if you do a little thing, it could turn into something amazingly large. It could make a difference. And I actually think that's a powerful statement, and I think it's a good thing to be saying. We can do small things. Each one of us can do small things to make a difference in the world, and as we do them together, they grow to 100-fold. I think that's an amazing statement, and I want my child to know that. At the same time, I actually don't think that's what this parable is about. Each one of these parables is about something that's hidden right in front of us. Whether it's the good fish, or the mustard seed, or the yeast that's in the dough, or the pearls, the fancy pearls. All of these things are hidden right there. But it's our job, Jesus is saying, to go and figure out what is truly the most important things. You've got to do something. You've got to do something. You have to look through the weeds of the world and find out what you're really called to do. How do you use the gifts that you've received to make a difference in God's kingdom? And God's kingdom is not about some place that's far away or in some other world. God's kingdom is right here. God's kingdom is right now. God's kingdom is around you every single day. Look for those hidden things. Look for those mustard seeds, the small seeds of mustard. Look for the good fish. Find those things. Take them up and make them grow. That is what Jesus is calling us to do. How do we use what we have been given to serve, to make God's kingdom come about right here, right now? So as you hear these parables, they're hard. They're challenging. Don't just say yes. I understand what these mean. Look in your life, just as I'm trying to look in my life, and find out what God is hiding right there for us. The opportunities that are near us if we're able to get through the busyness of who we are. Because when we do that, we will find the kingdom of heaven. And when we find the kingdom of heaven, it can take over the world. Amen.